My sister called CPS on me with fake accusations. I got her own kids taken away. Me and my sister Lori were always close growing up. She's 3 years older, was the one who taught me to ride a bike, stood up for me when kids picked on me in middle school. When I had my daughter Zoe 5 years ago, Lori was in the delivery room holding my hand. She was the best aunt at first, coming over every weekend, bringing little outfits, watching Zoe so me and my husband Paul could have date nights. Everything changed when Lori's husband Jason left her last year. She got mean, bitter, started drinking wine at 10 in the morning, would come over and make comments about how Paul would probably leave me too, how all men were trash, how I was stupid for trusting him. I tried being supportive, but she just got worse. Started showing up drunk at Zoe's soccer games, yelling at the ref, embarrassing my kid. Other parents started asking if everything was okay with my family. Then Lori decided she wanted custody of her ex's kids from his previous marriage. They'd been living with their mom but visited Jason on weekends, which meant Lori saw them sometimes before the divorce. She had this crazy idea that if she got the kids, Jason would have to pay her child support and maybe come back. The kids barely knew her, and their mom Rita was perfectly fine, good job, stable home, no issues. But Lori started this campaign, calling Rita's job claiming she was on drugs, telling the kids' school Rita was unstable. Nothing worked because Rita was actually a good mom. So Lori came to me with this plan. She wanted me to lie and say I'd seen Rita hit the kids. I told her absolutely not. That was insane. Those kids were happy and safe. She called me selfish, said I never supported her, that I had everything while she had nothing. I said maybe focus on getting your life together instead of trying to steal someone's children. She left screaming that I'd regret not helping her. 2 weeks later, I'm making lunch and there's a knock at the door. 2 CPS workers standing there with a clipboard saying they received a report about neglect and abuse. They needed to inspect my home immediately and speak to Zoe. I let them in because I had nothing to hide, but I was shaking. They went through everything, checked my fridge, looked in all the rooms, asked to see Zoe's arms and legs for bruises. My 5-year-old daughter had to stand there while strangers examined her body because of some anonymous report. They questioned her alone for 20 minutes while I sat outside the room crying. Paul had to leave work to come home. The workers found nothing wrong, obviously, but said they'd need to do follow-up visits. When they left, I knew it was Lori. The report claimed Zoe was malnourished, that we left her alone for hours, that Paul had anger issues. All lies but specific enough that someone who knew us made them. Called Lori and she denied it, said she'd never do that to family. But then she slipped and mentioned maybe now I'd understand how Rita felt being falsely accused. That's when I knew for sure. The CPS visits continued for a month. Zoe started having nightmares about strangers taking her away. Kids at school found out somehow and started teasing her about her parents going to jail. Paul's job found out when CPS called to verify his employment, and suddenly he was getting weird looks at work. His boss asked if everything was okay at home. We had to hire a lawyer just to navigate the investigation. Cost us $4,000 we'd been saving for Zoe's college fund. During all this, I started paying attention to Lori's house when I'd drive by. Noticed things. Her living room window was broken, covered with cardboard. Her yard was full of empty wine bottles. Her car had expired tags from 6 months ago. Saw her passed out on her front porch at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday while her mail piled up. Her neighbor Deb mentioned Lori had been having strange men over at all hours, loud parties on weeknights. Then I found out Lori had been babysitting for cash. 3 different families in her neighborhood, kids ranging from 2 to 8 years old. She'd watch them at her house while drinking, told the parents she was a certified daycare provider, which was a complete lie. So I made some calls. I picked up my phone and pulled up the CPS hotline number I'd saved 3 days ago. My hand shook so bad I almost dropped it twice before I managed to dial. A woman answered on the second ring and said she was there to take my report. I told her about the broken window covered in cardboard, about the yard full of wine bottles, about seeing my sister passed out on her porch in the middle of the afternoon. My voice cracked when I described the expired tags on her car and how she'd been drinking while watching other people's kids. The woman asked for names and I gave her all 3 families I knew about, spelled out each one carefully. She asked for the address and I recited Lori's street number like I was giving directions to my own execution. When she asked if the children were in immediate danger, I said yes, that my sister drank all day, and the house had safety violations. The woman thanked me for calling and said someone would investigate within 72 hours. I hung up and sat there staring at my phone, feeling this weird mix of power and terror flooding through my whole body. I'd just done to Lori exactly what she'd done to me, and part of me felt sick about it while another part felt completely justified. 3 days crawled by like torture. I jumped every time my phone rang and checked Ruth's Facebook page about 15 times a day looking for any mention of Lori. On the morning of day 4, Ruth called while I was unloading the dishwasher. She sounded excited in that way neighbors get when there's drama happening on their street. She said a CPS worker had shown up at Lori's house around 9 that morning in an official county vehicle. The worker went inside and stayed for over an hour while Ruth watched from her kitchen window. When the worker finally came out, she took photos of the front yard, the broken window, and Lori's car. Ruth said Lori stood on her porch looking pale and shaky, her arms wrapped around herself like she was freezing even though it was 70 degrees outside. I made myself sound confused and asked Ruth what she thought it was about. Ruth said she had no idea, but it looked serious. All those photos and the long visit. My heart hammered so hard against my ribs I thought Ruth might hear it through the phone. I told her that was really strange and to keep me updated if she heard anything else. After we hung up, I had to sit down on the kitchen floor because my legs wouldn't hold me up anymore. That same afternoon, my phone rang with Lori's name on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before I answered, trying to sound normal. Lori was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her at first. She kept saying someone reported her to CPS, that they claimed she was running an illegal daycare, that they'd inspected her whole house and taken pictures of everything. Her voice got louder and angrier as she talked, saying she was just helping out some neighbors for extra cash, that she would never put kids in danger, that someone was trying to destroy her life. I made sympathetic sounds while she ranted, saying things like, "That's crazy, and who would do that?" She went quiet for a second and then asked directly if I knew anything about it. I lied so smoothly it scared me a little, telling her it was probably one of the parents who got mad about something stupid. I suggested maybe one of the kids got hurt playing and the parent overreacted. Lori seemed to accept this and started crying again about how unfair it all was. We talked for another 10 minutes with me making supportive noises while she fell apart. When we finally hung up, I stared at my reflection in the blank TV screen and didn't recognize the person looking back at me. Within a week, all 3 daycare families got calls from CPS. Ruth told me about the first one because the mother lived 2 doors down from Lori. The woman had no idea Lori didn't have a childcare license or background check or insurance. She'd believed Lori was certified because Lori had shown her some fake papers she'd printed off the internet. The second family found out the same way, and the third family's father actually called the police to report fraud. On Thursday evening, Ruth called to say one of the mothers had confronted Lori on her front lawn. The shouting was loud enough that Ruth heard every word from inside her house with the windows closed. The mother screamed about how Lori had lied about being certified, how she'd trusted her with her kids, how she could have them taken away for leaving them with an unlicensed provider. Lori tried to defend herself, but her words were slurred, and the mother told her she was drunk right now. I drove past Lori's house that evening on my way back from the grocery store. Every light was off and her car was gone from the driveway. The front yard still had all those wine bottles scattered around and the broken window stared out like a dead eye. I felt this rush of satisfaction, so intense it almost felt physical, like electricity running through my chest. Lori was finally facing real consequences for once in her life, and I was the one who'd made it happen. Zoe woke up screaming for the 3rd night in a row. I heard her from the hallway and ran to her room to find her sitting up in bed crying so hard she was choking on her own tears. She kept saying the strangers were back, that they were going to look at her body again and ask her scary questions. I climbed into bed with her and pulled her onto my lap, holding her tight while she sobbed into my shoulder. Her whole body shook and she felt so small and fragile in my arms. The rage I felt toward Lori in that moment burned so hot I couldn't see straight. This was what my sister had done to my baby. These nightmares and this fear that wouldn't go away no matter how many times I promised Zoe she was safe. Paul appeared in the doorway at some point, his hair sticking up and his eyes half closed. He didn't say anything, just came and sat on the floor next to the bed and wrapped his arms around both of us. We stayed like that until Zoe finally cried herself back to sleep around 3:30 in the morning. Paul carried her back to her own bed while I stood there feeling like my heart had been ripped out of my chest and stomped on. 10 days after I made that call to CPS, Lori showed up at my front door unannounced. I saw her through the peephole, her eyes red and swollen, her hair greasy and uncombed. I thought about not answering, but she'd already seen my car in the driveway. I opened the door and she pushed past me into the house before I could stop her. She turned on me and demanded to know if I had anything to do with the CPS investigation. Her voice was sharp and accusing, and her hands were balled into fists at her sides. I looked right at her face and told her she was being paranoid, that maybe she should focus on getting her life together instead of accusing family members. She stepped closer and I could smell the wine on her breath even though it was only 11 in the morning. She said she knew it had to be someone who knew about the daycare, someone who'd seen her house, someone who wanted to hurt her. I held her stare and said lots of people had seen her house and maybe she should think about why. So many people might be concerned. She stared at me for what felt like forever, her eyes searching my face like she was trying to see through my skull into my brain. Then she turned and walked out without another word, slamming the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. 2 weeks into the investigation, Ruth called with more updates. She said the CPS worker had come back for a second visit, and this time brought someone else with her. Mariah Lozano spent 3 hours inside Lori's house documenting everything. Ruth said she'd heard from another neighbor that they found broken smoke detectors in every room and mold growing in the bathroom around the tub. The fridge had spoiled food that had been sitting there for weeks based on the smell. They found children's backpacks and toys mixed in with empty wine bottles all over the living room. The official report listed multiple safety violations and clear evidence of substance abuse in a childcare environment. When Ruth told me all this, I felt this surge of vindication rush through me. I hadn't been exaggerating or making things up to hurt Lori. She really had been endangering those kids, really had been drinking while she was supposed to be watching them, really had been running an unsafe operation. Everything I'd reported was true, and now there was official documentation proving it. Lori lost all 3 daycare clients immediately. Ruth said she'd seen the families come by one after another to pick up their kids' belongings, and none of them would even look at Lori. 2 days later, a letter came from the county about potential criminal charges for operating a childcare facility without a license. Mom called me that evening saying Lori had called her sobbing about the letter, about losing her income, about how she was going to pay rent now. Mom's voice was worried and sad, and she asked if I'd talked to Lori lately. I said no and didn't offer any explanation. Mom suggested I should reach out since Lori was really struggling, and I said Lori needed to face reality for once instead of expecting everyone to bail her out. Mom got quiet, and then said she was disappointed in how cold I was being toward my sister. I told her she didn't know the whole story and got off the phone before she could push harder. I didn't call Lori back when she left me 3 voicemails that week, and I deleted each one without listening to the whole message. Paul found me at midnight sitting in the dark scrolling through Ruth's Facebook page. She'd posted photos of Lori's house with comments about how sad it was to see someone fall apart like this. I was reading through all the comments from neighbors talking about the CPS investigation when Paul's hand appeared and gently closed my laptop. He sat down next to me on the couch and asked if I was okay. His voice was soft and concerned in a way that made my throat tight. He said he was worried about how obsessed I'd gotten with Lori's situation, that I'd been checking for updates constantly for 2 weeks. I snapped at him that he didn't understand what it was like having strangers examine our daughter, seeing Zoe stand there while they looked for bruises on her body. He backed off immediately and held up his hands, but I could see the concern in his eyes. He thought I was taking this too far, that my anger at Lori was consuming me. I wanted to explain that I needed to know she was facing consequences, that I needed proof her lies hadn't won, but I couldn't find the words. We sat in silence for a while before Paul kissed my forehead and went back to bed. I stayed on the couch and opened my laptop again as soon as I heard our bedroom door close. 4 weeks after Lori's false report against us, an envelope arrived from CPS with an official county seal. My hands shook as I opened it and pulled out the letter from Grayson Huff. It stated that after thorough investigation, all allegations against our family had been found to be completely unfounded. Our case was officially closed and our family required no further monitoring or follow-up. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood every word. Then I went to the craft store and bought a frame that afternoon. I hung the letter in our hallway right next to the family photos where I'd see it every single day. Every time I walked past it, I felt this surge of bitter triumph flood through my chest. Paul came home from work and saw it hanging there, and he asked quietly if maybe we should just put it away in a file somewhere. I refused and told him I wanted that proof visible where I could see it. He looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read, something between concern and sadness, but he didn't argue. I needed that letter on the wall as evidence that I'd been right, that Lori had been wrong, that her lies hadn't destroyed us no matter how hard she'd tried. I grabbed the last bag of groceries from the trunk and carried it inside, my mind still replaying the scene with the framed letter hanging in the hallway. The phone rings just as I set the bag on the counter and I see Ruth's name on the screen. I answer while pulling out milk and eggs, expecting her usual neighborhood gossip about someone's lawn or a new fence going up. Her voice sounds different though, lower and more serious than normal, and she asks if I'm sitting down. I tell her I'm fine standing, and she takes this long breath before saying the county opened a full investigation into Lori for child endangerment. My hand stops halfway to the fridge with the milk carton. Ruth keeps talking, explaining that one of the daycare kids told his parents that Miss Lori fell asleep on the couch one afternoon, and they couldn't wake her up no matter how hard they tried. The kid said he was scared and the other children were crying, but Miss Lori just kept sleeping for a really long time. My fingers go completely numb around the milk carton and it slips right through my grip. The plastic jug hits the tile floor and explodes, white liquid spraying across the kitchen in every direction. But I barely notice because Ruth is still talking about how the parents immediately called CPS, and now there's a criminal investigation, not just the licensing violation. A jar of pasta sauce rolls out of the grocery bag and falls off the counter, shattering next to the milk, and the red sauce spreads across the white puddle like blood mixing with water. I stare at the mess on my kitchen floor, red and white swirling together, and Ruth asks if I'm still there. I manage to say yes, and she tells me the investigation is serious, that Lori could face actual charges if they prove she was passed out drunk while watching children. After we hang up, I just stand there looking at the broken glass and spilled groceries, and I can't move to clean it up. The parent-teacher conference is scheduled for Thursday afternoon, and Paul takes off work early to come with me. We sit in those tiny chairs made for kindergartners while Zoe's teacher arranges papers on her desk. She starts by saying Zoe is doing well academically, her reading is above grade level, and her math skills are strong. Then her voice shifts and she says she wants to discuss some behavioral concerns. She pulls out a folder and shows us drawings Zoe made during art time over the past few weeks. The first one shows stick figures with big round heads, a small one in the middle surrounded by two tall dark shapes with no faces. The teacher explains Zoe labeled the small figure as herself and told the art teacher the dark shapes were taking her away. The next drawing shows a house with a little girl looking out the window at more dark shapes approaching. Every single drawing has these dark, faceless figures coming closer to the small stick figure that represents my daughter. The teacher's voice is gentle, but firm as she explains that Zoe has become withdrawn in class, that she cries when adults she doesn't know well ask her questions, that she sometimes refuses to participate in group activities. She says Zoe used to be one of the most outgoing kids in class, but something has changed. Paul's hand finds mine under the table and squeezes hard. The teacher recommends we consider counseling, that Zoe seems to be processing some kind of trauma, and she can provide referrals to child therapists who work with the school. I manage to nod and take the list of names she offers. We thank her and leave, and I hold those drawings in my hand all the way to the car. As soon as we get home, I look up the first therapist on the list and call to schedule an appointment. The receptionist says they have an opening next Tuesday at 4. I take it and hang up, then walk straight to the bathroom and lock the door. I turn on the shower so Paul won't hear me, and I slide down the wall until I'm sitting on the cold tile floor. The crying comes in waves that hurt my chest and make my throat raw. I cry until there's nothing left and my face is swollen and my eyes burn. When I finally come out, Paul is making dinner and he doesn't ask any questions, just pulls me into a hug that lasts a long time. Mom calls on Saturday morning while I'm folding laundry, and her voice has that tight quality that means she's upset. She says the court date got set for 6 weeks from now and Lori is really scared. I keep folding towels and wait for her to continue. Mom explains that the prosecutor is pushing for jail time, that child endangerment while intoxicated is a serious charge, that Lori could actually go to prison. My hands smooth out a towel that doesn't need smoothing. Mom asks if I'll come to court to support my sister, that family should stick together during hard times, that Lori needs to know she's not alone. I tell her I don't know, that Mom gets quiet for a minute, then says she understands this is complicated, but Lori is still my sister. After we hang up, I sit on the couch with the half-folded laundry basket next to me. My hands are shaking and I press them flat against my thighs to make them stop. I can't tell if the shaking is from fear that Lori might actually go to jail, or excitement that she's finally facing real consequences, or guilt that I caused all of this. The three feelings twist together in my stomach until I can't separate them anymore. I pick up another towel and try to focus on the simple task of folding, matching corners and smoothing wrinkles, anything to stop thinking about my sister standing in front of a judge because of calls I made. The grocery store on Tuesday afternoon is busy with people stopping after work. I'm in the produce section picking through apples when someone appears next to me. I look up and recognize her immediately as one of the daycare mothers, the one with the little boy who has red hair. Her face is twisted with anger, and her voice is loud enough that people in the next aisle can probably hear. She says she knows I'm Lori's sister and demands to know if I knew about the drinking. Did I know my sister was getting drunk while watching children? Did I know she was passing out and leaving kids unsupervised? Her face is right up close to mine, and I can see other shoppers turning to stare. I stammer that I had no idea, that Lori and I aren't close anymore, that I didn't know she was babysitting at all. The woman's eyes are hard and disbelieving. She says her son had nightmares for weeks after that day, that he was terrified and didn't understand why the grown-up wouldn't wake up. She asks how I can live with myself knowing my sister put children in danger. People are openly watching now, an elderly couple with their cart stopped in the middle of the aisle, a teenage stock boy pretending to arrange oranges while listening. I mumble something about being sorry and start backing away with my half-full cart. The woman follows me for a few steps, saying she hopes I know what kind of person my sister really is. I practically run to the checkout, abandon my cart, and rush to my car. My hands shake so hard I can barely get the key in the ignition. I take the long way home from work on Wednesday, the route that goes past Lori's street even though it adds 10 minutes. I tell myself I'm just curious, that I want to see if her car is there, nothing more than that. When I turn onto her block, I see the pile immediately. All of her furniture is stacked on the curb in front of her house. The couch I sat on 100 times growing up. The kitchen table where we ate meals as kids when we visited. Boxes and bags and loose items just dumped in a heap. There's a bright orange eviction notice taped to her front door. Her car sits crooked in the driveway with the driver's door hanging open like she got out in a hurry and forgot to close it. Then I see her. She's sitting on the front steps with her head in her hands, her shoulders curved forward, her whole body looking small and broken. I slow down without meaning to, and for a second our eyes might have met. I'm not sure. I press the gas pedal and drive past without stopping, But even after I turn the corner, I can still see her there in my mind, surrounded by all her belongings on the curb, nowhere to go, everything falling apart. My stomach churns and tightens, and I have to pull over 2 blocks away because I think I might throw up. I sit in my parked car, taking deep breaths until the feeling passes. Paul gets home from work around 7, and I'm standing at the kitchen counter staring at nothing. He asks how my day was, and I tell him fine. He knows I'm lying because he always knows. He mentions that Mom called him at work, that she told him about Lori getting evicted, that she's worried about me. Something inside me snaps. I tell him he has no right to talk to my mother about me behind my back. He says Mom is worried, and he's worried too, that I've let my anger at Lori consume me. I hear myself screaming that he has no idea what this feels like, that his sister didn't try to destroy his family, that he gets to sit back and judge my choices from his perfect position of not being hurt. He says he's not judging. He's scared because I've become someone he doesn't recognize. The words hit me like a slap. I grab the coffee mug sitting on the counter and throw it at the wall. It shatters and pieces scatter across the floor, and I'm already collapsing, my legs giving out, sliding down to sit on the kitchen tile. The crying comes hard and fast, my whole body shaking with sobs I can't control. Paul stands there for a minute not moving. Then he sits down next to me on the floor and pulls me against his chest. He doesn't say anything, just holds me while I shake and cry and make sounds that don't form words. We sit there on the kitchen floor surrounded by broken ceramic until I finally stop shaking. Mom calls the next morning before I've even finished my coffee. Her voice is careful and measured when she tells me Lori is staying with her now because she has nowhere else to go. I grip the phone tighter. Mom says she needs to ask me something directly, and she wants an honest answer. She asks if I had anything to do with the CPS investigation of Lori, if I made the calls that started all of this. The question hangs in the air between us, and I can't make myself say yes, but I also can't lie to my mother's face, not directly. So I just stay silent. The silence stretches out for what feels like forever. Finally, Mom's voice comes back quieter and sadder. She says she needs to hear my side of the story, that she's trying to understand what happened between her daughters. She says she knows Lori hurt me first, but she needs to know what I did and why I did it. I tell her I'll call her back later and hang up before she can respond. My hands are shaking again, and I set the phone down on the counter very carefully, like it might explode. Zoe asks me at bedtime why Aunt Lori doesn't come over anymore. Her voice is small and confused, and it breaks something inside me. I sit on the edge of her bed and try to explain in words a 5-year-old can understand. I tell her sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and need time apart to figure things out. Zoe's eyes fill with tears, and she asks if Aunt Lori did something bad that made us mad at her. I say it's complicated and grown-up stuff that she doesn't need to worry about. Zoe says she misses her aunt, that Aunt Lori used to bring her presents and play games with her. A tear rolls down Zoe's cheek and I wipe it away. I lie down next to her in her small bed and hold her until she falls asleep. Even after her breathing gets slow and steady, I stay there, staring at her ceiling in the dark. I think about how Lori used to be Zoe's favorite person, how they had their own special jokes and games, how Zoe's face would light up when Lori walked in. My revenge didn't just destroy my relationship with my sister. It destroyed my daughter's relationship with her aunt. Zoe lost someone she loved because I was angry and wanted Lori to hurt. I stay in Zoe's bed until my arm goes numb and my neck starts aching from the awkward position, but I can't make myself get up and leave her. The courtroom is smaller than I expected, with wood paneling and fluorescent lights that make everything look washed out. I sit in the back row where I can see everything but hopefully won't be noticed. Lori stands before the judge in clothes that hang off her frame like she borrowed them from someone bigger. Her hair looks unwashed and hangs limp around her face. Her hands tremble at her sides. The prosecutor stands and describes the charges in detail. Operating an unlicensed childcare facility. Child endangerment. Reckless endangerment while intoxicated. He talks about the broken smoke detectors, the mold, the spoiled food, the empty wine bottles mixed with children's toys. He describes how one child found Lori unconscious on the couch and couldn't wake her up, how scared the children were, how they cried and didn't know what to do. Lori just stands there nodding, tears running down her face, not trying to defend herself or make excuses. She admits to everything. The judge asks if she has anything to say, and Lori's voice comes out, so quiet I can barely hear it from the back row. She says she's sorry, that she was drinking too much and made terrible choices, that she never meant to hurt anyone but she did, and she knows that. She says she's in treatment now and working on getting better. The prosecutor argues for jail time, saying the community needs to know that endangering children has serious consequences. Lori's public defender argues for probation and treatment, pointing to her clean record before this, and her cooperation with the investigation. I sit in the back watching all of this unfold, and I expect to feel satisfied, vindicated, like justice is finally happening. Instead, my stomach feels sick, and I want to leave, but I force myself to stay. I caused this. I made the calls that brought her here. I need to witness what I did. The judge takes only a few minutes to decide. He sentences Lori to 2 years probation, mandatory substance abuse treatment 3 times a week, 200 hours of community service, and permanent prohibition from any childcare work. Lori accepts the terms in that same small voice I can barely hear. When the judge dismisses her, she turns to leave and her eyes sweep across the courtroom. They land on me sitting in the back row. We look at each other for maybe 2 seconds, maybe less. I try to read her expression, but I can't tell what I see there. Is it understanding that I did this to her? Is it hatred for what I took from her? Is it just exhaustion and defeat? Then she looks away and walks toward where Mom is waiting near the door. I sit in the empty courtroom after everyone else has left, staring at the empty space where my sister stood, and I don't know what I'm feeling anymore. Outside the courthouse, I walk toward my car with Paul beside me when I hear footsteps behind us. I turn and Lori is standing there, maybe 10 feet away, her face pale and drawn. Paul's hand tightens on my arm, but I shake my head slightly and he backs up a few steps, giving us space. Lori walks closer until she's right in front of me, close enough that I can see the dark circles under her eyes and the way her clothes hang loose on her frame. She looks at me for a long moment without saying anything, and I wait, my heart hammering in my chest. When she finally speaks, her voice comes out quiet and steady. She says she knows I reported her to CPS, that she's not stupid, that she put it together when the investigator asked specific questions about things only family would know. I open my mouth to deny it, but she holds up her hand and says she's not here to fight, that she deserves what happened. She says she endangered those kids and she's grateful someone stopped her before something worse happened. My throat tightens and I don't know what to say to that. Lori takes a breath and continues, saying that I'm not innocent either, that what I did was revenge dressed up as concern. She says we both tried to destroy each other using the system meant to protect children, and we both succeeded, and now we have to live with what we've done to each other and our family. I feel like the ground is tilting under my feet, like everything solid is turning to sand. Lori doesn't wait for me to respond. She turns and walks toward where Mom is standing by her car, and I watch her go, unable to move or speak. Paul comes up beside me and asks if I'm okay, and I realize I'm shaking. We get in the car and drive home in silence, and I stare out the window seeing nothing. That night, after Zoe is asleep, I find Paul in the living room and I sit down next to him on the couch. He mutes the TV and turns to face me, and I can see in his eyes that he knows something is coming. The words stick in my throat at first, but I force them out. I tell him I'm scared that I've become the bad person in this story, that I used what happened to Zoe to justify destroying my sister. I say I don't know anymore if what I did was justice or just cruelty, if I was protecting our family or just getting revenge. Paul doesn't say anything right away, just pulls me against his chest and holds me while I start to cry. When he finally speaks, his voice is gentle but honest. He says I was hurt and angry and human, that Lori hurt us first, but that doesn't make everything I did right. He says people aren't heroes or villains. They're just people making choices, and sometimes those choices cause pain, even when the anger behind them is valid. We sit together in the dark living room for what feels like hours, not talking, just breathing together. I feel the weight of my guilt settling into my bones, heavy and permanent, and I know I'm going to carry this for the rest of my life. Paul's arms stay around me the whole time, and I'm grateful he's not leaving even though I don't deserve his patience. Eventually we go to bed, but I lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every choice I made, every call I placed, every detail I reported. I don't sleep until the sun starts coming up. 3 days later, Mom calls while I'm making lunch. Her voice has that tone from when we were kids, the one that means she's done being patient, and now we're going to deal with things whether we like it or not. She says this has gone on long enough, that we're having a family meeting at our house this Sunday, and both her daughters are going to sit down and talk like adults. I start to make excuses, but she cuts me off, saying she doesn't want to hear it. We're doing this. I agree because there's no arguing with that voice, but after I hang up, I run to the bathroom and throw up. The thought of being in the same room with Lori makes my whole body rebel. I spend the next 3 days practicing what I'll say, standing in front of the bathroom mirror and rehearsing my defense. I make lists of all the things Lori did first, all the ways she hurt us, all the reasons my actions were justified. Paul finds me at the kitchen table at midnight on Saturday, surrounded by crumpled paper, and he gently suggests maybe I snap at him that he doesn't understand, and he just nods and goes back to bed. I stay up the rest of the night going over and over my arguments, building my case like I'm going to trial. Sunday morning, I can barely eat breakfast. Zoe asks why I'm so quiet, and I tell her I'm just tired. Paul offers to come with me, but I say no. This is something I need to do alone. The drive to Mom's house takes 15 minutes, but feels like hours. I sit in her driveway for 10 minutes before I can make myself get out of the car. When I finally walk inside, I find Lori already sitting on Mom's couch looking even thinner than she did at the courthouse. Her hair is clean and pulled back, and she's wearing jeans and a sweater that look too big on her. Mom sits in the chair between us like a referee at a boxing match, her face serious and tired. She thanks us both for coming and says we're going to talk honestly about what happened. No more lies, no more avoiding the hard conversations. The air in the room feels thick and dangerous, like before a storm breaks. I grip my knees to keep my hands from shaking and stare at a spot on the carpet between Lori's feet. Mom looks at both of us and says whoever wants to go first should start, and the silence stretches out so long I can hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. I'm about to open my mouth when Lori clears her throat. Lori's voice when she speaks is steady and clear, nothing like the broken person I saw at the courthouse. She says she wants to start by taking full responsibility for making the false CPS report. She looks right at me and admits she was drunk and jealous, and wanted me to hurt the way she was hurting after Jason left. She says she saw me with my perfect family and my happy life, and she hated me for having everything she lost. The words hit me like punches, but I force myself to keep looking at her. She says she's in outpatient treatment now, going to meetings every day, and she's learning to take accountability for her actions. But then her voice gets harder, and she says she needs me to know that what I did back to her was different. She says her revenge was drunken and impulsive, made in a moment of rage, but mine was calculated and cold. She says I researched, I planned, I executed my revenge with clear intention while completely sober. I start to argue, to list all my justifications, but then I stop because I realize she's right. I did plan it. I did research exactly what to report to cause maximum damage. I made those calls knowing exactly what would happen to her. The realization sits in my chest like a stone. Mom waits until we're both quiet before she speaks. Her voice is sad and disappointed in a way that makes me feel 12 years old again. She says she's disappointed in both her daughters for what we did. She tells Lori she's glad she's getting help and needs to stay sober, that the drinking nearly destroyed her and could have killed those children. Then she turns to me and says I had every right to be angry after what Lori did to our family, but I let that anger turn me into someone who could destroy her own sister. She says we both weaponized the system that's supposed to protect children. We both used it as a weapon against each other, and we both caused damage that can't be undone. Mom says she loves us both, but we both need to take real accountability for the pain we've caused each other, our family, and those kids who got caught in our war. She says she's not going to pick sides because we're both wrong, and we both need to figure out how to live with what we've done. The room goes quiet again and I can hear Lori crying softly on the other end of the couch. I'm crying too, but trying to hide it. Mom gets up and says she's going to make coffee, that we can sit here as long as we need to, and she leaves us alone in the living room. Lori and I don't look at each other or speak. We just sit there in the heavy silence, both of us broken in different ways, both of us guilty, both of us having to figure out what comes next. Over the next month, Mom sends me text messages with updates about Lori. She tells me Lori is going to her court-ordered AA meetings 3 times a week, that she's attending the outpatient treatment program seriously, that she's working the steps with a sponsor. Each text includes some small detail, like how Lori shared in a meeting for the first time, or how she's been sober for 30 days, then 45, then 60. I don't respond to any of the messages, but I read every single one, sometimes multiple times. I save them in a folder on my phone that I look at late at night when I can't sleep. Something is shifting in my chest, some hard knot of anger that's been there since the CPS workers showed up at my door. I can't tell if it's the beginning of forgiveness or just exhaustion from carrying all this rage. Paul notices I'm checking my phone more and asks if everything is okay. I show him the messages from Mom and he reads them quietly, then hands my phone back without comment. He just squeezes my shoulder and goes back to whatever he was doing, and I'm grateful he's not pushing me to feel anything I'm not ready to feel yet. Paul brings up couples counseling one night after dinner. He says the whole situation with Lori put a strain on our marriage that we need to address before it causes permanent damage. I want to argue that we're fine, but I know he's right. We've been distant and careful with each other, like we're both afraid to say the wrong thing. I agree, and he makes the appointment for the following week. The therapist is a woman in her 50s with kind eyes who asks us to describe what brought us in. Paul talks about feeling shut out during the whole CPS investigation and aftermath, how I made decisions about Lori without including him, how he felt like he was watching me spiral but couldn't reach me. I get defensive at first, listing all the reasons I had to act alone, but the therapist gently points out that Paul is my partner, and I treated him like an outsider in his own family crisis. The session is hard and uncomfortable, and I leave feeling raw and exposed, but we go back the next week and the week after that. By our 4th session, something has loosened between us. We're holding hands again during the drive home, talking about things besides Lori and CPS and all the damage. Paul tells me he never stopped loving me even when he didn't like the choices I was making, and I start crying in the car. He pulls over and holds me while I sob, and I feel like maybe we're going to survive this after all. The envelope arrives on a Tuesday afternoon, my name written in Lori's handwriting across the front with a return address from Serenity Springs Treatment Center. I hold it for a full minute before opening it, my hands shaking enough that I have to set my coffee down. Inside are 4 pages of lined notebook paper covered in her careful cursive, the kind she used to use when writing thank you notes after birthdays. The first paragraph starts with an apology so raw it makes my chest hurt. She writes about the morning she called CPS on me, how she'd been drinking since she woke up, how she sat on her couch with her phone in her hand for 20 minutes before dialing. She describes the jealousy that ate at her every time she saw me with Paul and Zoe, how it felt like swallowing glass watching me have everything she'd lost. The second page details her drinking, when it started getting bad, how she'd hide bottles in her closet and drink before the sun came up. She writes about the moment Jason told her he was leaving, how something broke inside her that day and never healed right. On page 3, she talks about therapy, about learning that hurt people, about how she's starting to understand that her pain doesn't excuse what she did to me and Zoe. The last page is the hardest to read. She writes that she knows what she did to Zoe, how she made my 5-year-old daughter stand there while strangers examined her body, how she caused those nightmares and that fear. She says she understands if I never forgive her, that she doesn't deserve forgiveness, but she needs me to know she sees the damage now. She signs it just Lori, no love or your sister, just her name. I read all 4 pages 3 times, crying harder each time through. Then I fold them carefully and put them in my nightstand drawer, closing it slowly like I'm putting something fragile away. Zoe sleeps through the night for 14 nights straight without waking up once. Her teacher emails me to say Zoe raised her hand in class yesterday to answer a math question, something she hasn't done in months. At recess, she's playing with the other kids again instead of sitting alone by the fence. I pick her up from the school and she's chattering about her friend Emma's birthday party this weekend, about the art project they made, about how she got picked first for kickball. That Saturday, I stand at the edge of the soccer field watching her run after the ball, her ponytail bouncing, laughing when she misses and trying again. She looks like my daughter again, not the scared, quiet kid who used to flinch when adults asked her questions. The other parents are talking to her again, not avoiding us like we're contaminated. One of the moms asks if Zoe wants to come over for a play date next week, and I say yes, my throat tight. That night after Zoe goes to bed, I open my nightstand drawer and take out Lori's letter. I read it again in the dim light from my bedside lamp, and this time when I get to the part about hurt people hurting people, I start crying for both of us. I cry for my sister who was so broken she tried to destroy me, and I cry for myself because I was so angry I tried to destroy her back. I'm standing in the pharmacy waiting for Zoe's allergy prescription when someone says my name. Geneva is standing 3 feet away holding a basket with cough syrup and tissues, looking at me with this careful expression. She says she knows I'm Lori's sister, that she recognizes me from a picture Lori showed her once. My stomach drops and I grip the counter edge. She steps closer and says quietly that she wanted to thank me, that she doesn't know what I did, but the harassment stopped. Her kids aren't getting pulled out of class for welfare checks anymore. Nobody's calling her work claiming she's on drugs. The custody threats disappeared. She says her boys are sleeping better now, that they're not scared anymore about being taken away. I mumble something about being glad her family is okay, but my voice sounds hollow. She touches my arm gently and says she's sorry for whatever it cost me, then walks toward the register. I stand there holding my prescription slip, feeling like I might throw up. My revenge helped Geneva's family, protected her kids from Lori's harassment, but it also destroyed my own family, took away Zoe's aunt, broke my mother's heart. I leave without getting the prescription and sit in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes trying to breathe right. Mom calls on a Wednesday evening while I'm folding laundry. She sounds different, lighter somehow, and she tells me Lori hit 60 days sober yesterday. She's working at the grocery store on Mill Street, stocking shelves and running the register, showing up on time every day. She's living in a sober house with 3 other women, going to meetings every morning before work. Mom describes how Lori looks healthier, how her eyes are clear, how she's gaining weight back. She says maybe I could think about talking to Lori soon, that maybe enough time has passed. I tell her I'll think about it and we hang up. I sit there with a half-folded towel in my lap, and I realize something has shifted in my chest. I'm genuinely happy my sister is getting better. Not happy enough to call her, not ready to have her back in my life, but happy she's not drinking herself to death anymore. It's complicated and messy, and I don't know what to do with these feelings, but they're real. Mom calls again 2 days later, and this time her voice has that pushing quality, that mom tone that means she's not asking anymore. She says Zoe has been asking about Lori, wondering why Aunt Lori doesn't visit, if she's still sick. She suggests maybe a supervised visit would be good for everyone, help Zoe understand that family can heal. The word no comes out of my mouth before I even think about it. I say I won't risk Zoe's well-being, that Lori hasn't earned that yet, that my daughter's safety comes first. Mom gets quiet and then says she understands, that she'll respect my decision, but asks me to at least consider it. I hang up feeling my blood pressure rising, feeling protective and angry and confused. Am I protecting Zoe or am I punishing Lori? Is keeping them apart about safety or about revenge? I don't know the answer, and that scares me more than anything. I bring it up at Zoe's next therapy session, sitting in the comfortable chair across from the therapist while Zoe plays in the waiting room. I tell her about Mom's suggestion and brace myself for the therapist to say it's too soon, too dangerous. Instead, she leans forward and says Zoe has processed most of her CPS trauma, that she's showing real resilience and growth. A brief supervised visit with Lori might actually help Zoe understand that family relationships can heal, that people can get better. She emphasizes the words supervised and brief multiple times, and we spend 30 minutes talking through what boundaries would make it safe, where it would happen, who would be there, how long it would last, what we'd do if Zoe got upset. I leave with a plan written on a piece of paper in my purse, feeling like maybe I could try this, but my hands are shaking the whole drive home. Paul finds me that night sitting on our bed staring at the paper from the therapist. He sits down next to me and says he'll support whatever I decide about Lori, that he trusts my judgment and knows I'll protect Zoe. He says he sees how hard I'm working to balance anger with healing, how I'm trying to do the right thing even when it's unclear what the right thing is. He says he's proud of the person I'm becoming through this mess, that I'm not letting revenge consume me anymore. I start crying, and he pulls me into his arms, and I think about how easily this could have destroyed my marriage too. How Paul could have left when I was spiraling, when I was so focused on hurting Lori that I shut him out. But he stayed, and he's still here, and I'm grateful for that in a way I can't put into words. I sit down at the kitchen table the next Saturday morning and write back to Lori. The letter takes me 3 hours, and I throw away 5 drafts before I get it right. I acknowledge her apology, tell her I read every word, and I believe she's sorry. Then I write the hard part, about how I reported her daycare, about how I wanted her to hurt the way she hurt me. I tell her I was angry and wanted revenge, but also that those kids really weren't safe with her. I lay out my boundaries in clear language. Continued sobriety, respect for my family, time to rebuild trust. I tell her I'm not ready for our old relationship back because that's gone forever, but maybe we can figure out something new. I sign it and put it in an envelope before I can change my mind, drive to the post office and drop it in the mailbox outside. My hands are trembling when I let go of the envelope. Lori's response comes back in 7 days. The envelope is thin, and when I open it, there are just 2 paragraphs on a single page. She thanks me for being honest about reporting her, says she knows those kids weren't safe and she's grateful nobody got seriously hurt. She agrees to all my boundaries without arguing or making excuses. The second paragraph says she's not asking for our old relationship back because she understands that's gone, that we can't pretend nothing happened. But maybe we can build something new based on truth instead of the pretense we had before. She signs it your sister. Trying and I stare at those last 2 words for a long time. I fold this letter and put it in the drawer with the first one, 2 pieces of paper that represent something broken and maybe starting to heal. 3 months crawl by after the court hearing. I agree to meet Lori at Mom's house for coffee with Mom there the whole time. I almost cancel on Tuesday, then again on Friday morning. Paul drives me there and parks on the street, says he'll wait in the car and read his book. I walk up to Mom's front door feeling like I might pass out. Lori is already there when I come in, sitting at the kitchen table. She looks so different from the last time I saw her at the courthouse. Her face has filled out. Her skin looks healthy instead of gray. Her eyes are focused and clear. When she says hello, her voice doesn't shake and neither do her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. We sit at Mom's kitchen table where we ate cereal before school as kids, where we did homework and played cards and fought over who got the last cookie. Everything feels familiar. The scratches in the wood, the way the chair creaks, Mom's coffee pot gurgling on the counter. But everything is also completely different, because we're different now, changed by what we did to each other. The conversation is careful and awkward, like we're both walking through a room full of broken glass and bare feet. Lori tells me about her outpatient program, how they meet 3 times a week and work through the 12 steps. She talks about her new job stocking shelves at the grocery store, early morning shifts that keep her busy and tired in a good way. I tell her about Zoe's play therapy, how she's sleeping better now, how she made the all-star soccer team last month. We talk about Mom's garden, about the weather, about nothing important and everything safe. What happened sits between us like a wall we both pretend isn't there, but we feel it in every pause, every careful word choice. Lori doesn't mention CPS and I don't mention the daycare investigation, but they're present in the silence, in the way we both avoid certain topics. After 45 minutes, my coffee is cold and my shoulders ache from tension. I stand up and say I should get going, and Lori nods and thanks me for coming. Mom walks me to the door and squeezes my hand, and I drive home feeling like I just ran a marathon. Paul asks how it went and I tell him it was hard, but okay, that we talked without fighting and he says that's progress. I spend the rest of the day exhausted but not destroyed, and maybe that's the best I can hope for right now. 2 days later, I'm folding laundry when Zoe comes into the room holding her soccer trophy. She asks if Aunt Lori is feeling better now, if maybe she could come watch her play again sometime. The question catches me completely off guard because I didn't realize how much Zoe still thought about her aunt, how much she missed having Lori in her life. I sit down on the bed and pull Zoe onto my lap, and she's getting so big now, almost too heavy to hold like this. I ask what made her think about Aunt Lori, and Zoe says she remembers how Lori used to bring orange slices to her games and cheer really loud. I've been so focused on my own hurt, on protecting myself from more pain, that I didn't consider what Zoe lost when Lori disappeared from our lives. I tell Zoe that Aunt Lori was sick for a while, but she's getting better, and maybe we can see her again soon. Zoe's face lights up and she asks when, and I say I need to figure out what's safe first. After Zoe leaves to play, I sit there with the laundry basket and start thinking about what a visit might look like. Where would we meet? Who would be there? How long would it last? What boundaries would I need? I make a list on my phone of conditions that would make me feel safe, and by the time Paul gets home, I have a plan forming. I call Mom the next morning and tell her I want to try a supervised visit with Lori and Zoe at her house. Mom sounds surprised but happy, and we work out the details. 30 minutes maximum, Mom present the whole time, me ready to leave instantly if anything feels wrong. I tell Lori through Mom that this is happening, that she needs to be on time and appropriate and understand this is a trial. The morning of the visit, I'm so nervous I feel sick, checking my watch every 5 minutes, rehearsing reasons to leave if I need to. Zoe is excited and keeps asking if we're going to Grandma's yet, and I make her change her shirt twice because I need something to do with my hands. We arrive and Lori is already there, sitting on Mom's couch looking nervous too. Zoe runs to her and Lori hugs her, and I watch them like a hawk, analyzing every word, every gesture, every expression. Lori is gentle with Zoe, asking about school and soccer, listening when Zoe talks about her friends. When Zoe asks why she hasn't visited, Lori says she was sick for a while, but she's feeling better now, and Zoe accepts this explanation easily the way kids do. They look at a book together, and Lori helps Zoe with a puzzle, and the whole time I'm sitting 3 feet away ready to intervene. Mom brings out cookies and milk, and Zoe chatters happily while eating, and I realize my daughter is okay with this, that maybe I'm the one struggling more. After exactly 30 minutes, I stand up and say we need to go, and Zoe whines that she wants to stay longer. Lori says goodbye nicely and doesn't push for more time, and we leave. In the car, Zoe talks about how fun it was to see Aunt Lori, and I grip the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turn white. When we get home, I go straight to the bathroom and lean against the sink, shaking from adrenaline and relief that nothing bad happened. The visit went well enough that 3 days later, Zoe asks when she can see Aunt Lori again. I'm making dinner, and the question makes me pause with the knife in my hand. I realize my daughter is healing faster than I am, that she's ready to forgive and move forward while I'm still stuck in the past. Over the next month, we do 2 more supervised visits at Mom's house. Same conditions, same setup. Each time Lori shows up sober and appropriate, respectful of boundaries, gentle with Zoe. She doesn't ask for more time or different conditions, just accepts what I'm willing to give. During the 3rd visit, I watch Lori help Zoe build a tower with blocks, and I see glimpses of the sister I used to know, the one who taught me to ride a bike and stood up for me in middle school. I start to believe maybe she really is changing, that the drunk, angry person who called CPS isn't who she is anymore. Maybe the treatment is working. Maybe she's committed to staying sober. Maybe this isn't just an act. Paul says he can see the difference too, that Lori seems genuinely better, and I want to trust that, but I'm scared to let my guard down. In my therapy session the following week, I finally talk about the full complexity of what happened between me and Lori. My therapist asks me to sit with the uncomfortable truth that we both hurt each other, that there's no clear villain in this story. Lori hurt me first with the false CPS report, but I hurt her worse by getting her investigated and arrested. We both weaponized systems meant to protect children. Both used them for revenge instead of safety. I'm not the hero I wanted to be, the righteous mother protecting her family. I'm also not the villain Lori probably saw, the sister who destroyed her life out of spite. I'm somewhere in the middle, a hurt person who made destructive choices, and that's hard to accept. My therapist helps me understand that moral certainty is easier than moral complexity, that it's more comfortable to be completely right or completely wrong. But real life is messier than that, and I have to live with the discomfort of being both victim and perpetrator. It doesn't feel like resolution, like some big moment of clarity where everything makes sense. It just feels like truth, uncomfortable and complicated and real. We celebrate Zoe's 6th birthday at Mom's house 3 weeks later, and for the first time in almost a year, Paul, Mom, Lori, and I are all in the same room together. The atmosphere is tense and awkward, with long silences and careful conversations about nothing important. But Zoe is happy, surrounded by family, blowing out candles on her cake with her face glowing. Lori gives Zoe a small wrapped present, and when Zoe opens it, it's a book about being brave. Zoe hugs her aunt tight, and Lori's eyes fill with tears, and I watch them and feel this complicated mix of emotions I can't untangle. Grief for what we lost, for the close relationship we used to have that's gone forever. Guilt for my role in destroying it, for letting revenge consume me. But also cautious gratitude for what we're slowly building, this new relationship based on honesty instead of pretending everything is fine. After cake, Paul suggests we take a family photo and we all stand together awkwardly while Mom sets up her camera. The photo shows us smiling but tense, a family that survived something terrible and is trying to figure out how to be a family again. 10 months after I made those calls to CPS, Lori and I have settled into a limited but real relationship. We see each other at family events like birthdays and holidays, exchange occasional texts about Mom or practical things. We're not close and probably never will be again, not like we were growing up. Too much has happened, too much damage done on both sides. She stays sober, goes to her meetings, works her grocery store job, lives in her sober living house. I stay in therapy, work on my marriage, focus on being present for Zoe instead of consumed by anger. We both live with what we did to each other, carrying the weight of our choices. Some days I still feel guilty about reporting her, about the arrest and the probation and the permanent record. Some days I still feel justified, remembering Zoe's nightmares and the $4,000 and the month of hell Lori put us through. Most days I feel both, guilt and justification existing together, and I'm learning that's okay. My family survived, scarred but intact, changed by what happened but still here. Paul and I are stronger now, having worked through the crisis together. Zoe is healing, sleeping through the night, happy and healthy. Mom has both her daughters back in her life, even if we're not the daughters she raised. And me? I'm learning that sometimes the best outcome you can hope for isn't happiness or resolution or everything working out perfectly. Sometimes the best outcome is just survival, is making it through something terrible and coming out the other side still breathing, still trying, still human.